Hey, boys.
To the Rams, right?
Yeah.
What's up?
Hey, good morning.
How are you, buddy?
It was communion this morning, so we're running a little late.
Oh, no worries. How'd church
good.
go?
It went well. You're both fine recording this, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
If people want to look at our ugly mugs on YouTube, that's all right.
Right.
All right. So now you're gonna make me don't say anything because we're recording right now. You have a nice birthday?
It was good. Yeah. Yep.
Did you have a nice time in Arizona?
It was wonderful. Yeah. Good time hanging out with my parents, and it was a bummer that Jen couldn't come. She was supposed to start a master's of social work program, but ended up choosing not to. So she just kept kind of, she just never had any peace about it. So,
Yep.
So it was kind of like, Then we kind of were like, hey, do we scramble and get her a ticket? But she was like, I think so it was good.
All right. I'm going to disappear for a minute, take care of some personal needs, and
Okay.
I'll be right back.
All right, buddy. That's a pretty cool picture, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I wonder if that's either a sailfish. I think that's a sailfish.
Looks like it.
I think swordfish are bigger than that.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have maybe we'll just call it righteous envy of not being on the salt water enough to know.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah. And Tim's much more of a freshwater fisherman, but he gets down to Florida occasionally.
Okay.
Got some people down there. So
Nice. Yeah.
We've been fishing buddies for a long time.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. So where do you guys usually go?
So we've got kind of a fishing spot that we're very spoiled by. A couple of friends of Tim's live on a little private lake up kind of near, it's in like Cannon Township. So just north of like Egypt Valley. They own, and there's like 3 houses on this lake, and all in the same family, and that family is all connected with the churches that Tim has served at. So that's kind of our go-to fishing spot for bass. Basically, that's what we fish for when we fish there.
Yeah.
And, you're just spoiled because you catch 30-40 fish. So when you fish about anywhere else, it's like, oh, this is what real fishing's like, and it's
right.
not nearly as fun.
No, it's not. It's not.
Catching is more fun than fishing, but there's some days we go out there and it's not as productive, but it's still really fun.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot less fished, right? So it's kind of like
exactly where the people who live on the lake, they fish a little bit, but Tim and I are kind of the main fishermen out there. We probably go 6-8 times a summer.
Okay.
Whenever a lot of times on a Friday. Yeah. So I'll meet him out there on Friday morning, and that's not too far from his house. So I'll drive to his house and we'll head over. So
yeah, nice, man. Well, I'm looking forward to it too. We just booked a camping date for Ludington, and I just love fishing Hamlin and just that whole area.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Kimmy, how are you, friend?
I'm doing well, and you?
It's so good to see you. You're wearing your Packers gear, even though they lost last week, huh?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
In spirit.
Once a fan, always a fan, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. At least you didn't wear your cheese head.
No, you know what? I do not have that.
You don't have a cheese head? Oh man, you're not a real Packer fan then.
Yeah, I just can't. Yeah.
How are Roger and the kids doing?
They're doing well. They're doing well, yes.
Good.
Yeah.
This is my friend
Maggie's got-
Dave.
Pardon?
It's my friend Dave. I'm not sure if you've met him yet.
Hi, Dave. I don't think I have.
No, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thanks.
Kimmy and I go a long way back, Dave.
Okay.
Ooh, too
Oh.
far back.
Yeah, so when Tim was the youth pastor over at Central Reformed Church before his call to Thornapple, then Kimmy and I and Jen and a bunch of other really good friends were all volunteer youth leaders together with him. So
Okay. So wait, Central here in Grand Rapids?
Central Reformed, yep, right downtown.
Yeah, cool.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So that's where we all met like
Yes.
30 years ago.
Wow, nice.
Literally, I was
Wow.
just telling him, like, I think it was 30 years ago this year. So
Okay.
long time.
And then Tim was my youth pastor when I was a senior in high school. So that's how
Yeah. So you've known him even longer. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And now, how much younger are you than me, Kimmy? Because I just turned 50.
Oh, I'll be, what will I be? Man, I'll be 52 in June.
No kidding. You're older than me. I thought you were younger. I swore that.
You know,
Yep. Time
rub
flies.
it in.
And Deep's got probably like what, 4 years on you? Is he 56?
Yeah.
He's probably 56, 7, something like that.
Can't remember.
Eric, when did you turn 50?
On Friday.
Oh, well, I apologize. Happy birthday,
No,
man.
hey, thanks. No worries. Yeah. Yeah.
So you and I are close too, because I 50 was my mile marker in September.
Oh, no kidding. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're only a few months apart.
Yeah. I always figured, you know what? Before it was, if I make it to 30, I'm doing well. And now,
Yeah,
you know, that keeps on growing.
that's right. That's exactly right. Yep. No kidding. I was just telling Dave, as I look out at the snow falling out my window, I'm like, not that sad that this class is on Zoom today. So I can do it from my living room.
It yeah, it has been nice
Yeah. Yep.
to get some guest speakers from all over the country.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that you guys are thinking deeply about how to be more open to people of varying abilities.
Yes.
That's great. And I know that that's something that's been on Tim's heart for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. So yeah, hopefully.
How many people have been joining typically?
Oh, Brady Bunch. 9 to 12. Kind of all depends on the Sunday, I
Yeah,
guess.
for sure.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hey, Deep, when did you guys start actually gathering in person again?
First Sunday of July, then we had a respite from the second week of November until the second week of January.
Okay, so just a few weeks back, you started back.
And I mean, it's interesting because the concern was initially that we would have to go to 2 services based on our numbers. But like today, we had plenty of space.
Yeah, I would imagine the weather had a lot to do with that.
Well, except the sign up.
Interesting.
So I just think people, I know that there's some folks who are waiting until they get their second vaccine and all that kind of stuff. So
Yep.
in addition to our folks here, so what I'm doing is I'm waiting people who are in church that are on their way home to join this class.
Totally, I get it.
To
Yep.
see them come in.
Yep.
2 of the people that are normally here aren't going to be here. Hi, Dave.
Hey.
Rachel and Stephen looks like they're going to be way down the hall. Oh, and Jesse.
Yeah, we didn't think we get home in time. Oh wait, well you could be on our screen. We don't have to be in the same room on different screens. Just come over here.
It's actually better anyway, because you always get that little echoey, funky thing when you got a couple of screens open in the same room.
Yeah.
the joys of Zoom.
So, where you see Rachel in the middle there, the gentleman in the black, I think it dark, that's her fiance, Stephen. Stephen works for Mocha. Do you work for Mocha? Yeah. In terms of the system, just to give you a.
Nice.
Dave, did you shovel today?
Which Dave?
Yes, yes, we were there to shovel. Although the plow has a lot of it, which is really nice. And I was kind of surprised that the salt was working. I thought in single digits that salt didn't really melt.
Don? Don, are you at home or at the cottage? Are you at home or at the cottage?
Can't see the first.
I don't think he's hearing me. Home. As soon as the spawns climb on, that's usually, or Dave. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Tim.
Well, I'm just going to trust that these first minutes of introduction can be filled in other ways. So let me introduce our two guests that will be sharing with us today. Eric Peterson is the chaplain at the pastor of the Ben's Hope Church. He works with our good friend Brett. Dave Vande is the church planter. We still call you a church planter? Is that?
Yeah, for sure. That's fair.
Of City Hope Church. I've asked each of them to just take a few minutes to introduce themselves, the work that they do, the folks that they work with, because they can say it better than I can. So we'll do this like in youth group days. Whose birthday is closest? Oh, that's a given though. I knew, yeah. Eric, you get to go first. Your birthday was yesterday or 2 days ago. So
Yeah. So thanks guys for welcoming us. First, I just want to say I'm encouraged that your church is thinking deeply about these things, about what does it mean to be a church that more fully embraces people affected by disability. And as Tim said, my name's Eric Peterson. I am the pastor of an all abilities congregation at Benjamin's Hope. Many of you know Paul and Mary Westlink well, and their son Brett. Brett lives at Benjamin's Hope. It's a residential facility for adults affected by disability. And right from the start, the vision of Benjamin's Hope was to have a church planted right at the center of that ministry. And so our mission at the Church of Benjamin's Hope is connecting people of all abilities with Jesus and one another. And the church has existed. It was planted in October of 2013, so over 7 years now. When it was first planted, I was kind of a bivocational church planter. I was the discipleship pastor at Beechwood Church in Holland, and just worked part-time with a really small group of adults at Benjamin's Hope, probably 15 folks when we started. And as time went on, and as the ministry of Benjamin's Hope grew, and as the church grew, and as we drew more people from the community to the church, it became increasingly clear that we would need full-time pastoring. And so 5 years ago, like last week, I made the switch to full-time work at Benjamin's Hope. So currently, or pre-COVID, we were worshiping in person, about 120 to 150 people each week, of all abilities. We consider our church of all abilities. And we're really a vision and core value driven church. So our 4 core values are transcendent hope. So we've got a very hope-filled, gospel-centered communication. We've got an everybody matters core value. And you guys learned, I think, last week about the 5 stages of attitudes toward disability. I think Dan Vanderplatz and Terry kind of walked you through that. And that's a guiding principle for us, kind of moving people up those 5 stages and really trying to move everybody in our midst to co-laboring together, regardless of ability. We've got a freedom of expression core value, meaning that a lot of our friends more significantly affected by disability that kind of either have vocalizations or movement or different sounds or things like that. We kind of celebrate that as an act of worship rather than a distraction in worship. And then we've got a dignity-based communication value, which I think is kind of really at the heart of what we do, is that we assume intelligence in all of our friends rather than assuming non-intelligence. So it's a very, there's a lot of kind of handles and hands-on aspect to our worship and our gatherings, but it's not a Sunday school or dumbed down or kind of childlike service in any way. So yeah, those are our kind of guiding values and principles, and that's me.
So I'm just by way of raising your hands, how many of you have attended a worship service at Ben's Hope?
Hey, I love that. That's awesome.
Good. So
those who haven't raised their hands, you got to get out there.
yeah, it's one of those things that I've been to several, and it's always a wonderful experience and a wonderful time of worship. It's not an experience as well, I guess worship.
Always stories to tell on your way home in the car, for sure.
Shout out to Pastor Tim.
That's right, exactly. You get shout outs, yeah. Yep. Especially the Thornapple folks that come get shout out for sure. From Brett, absolutely. From Brett.
Yep. All right, Dave.
Yeah, so it's great to be here. Thanks for having me as well today. It's interesting because just the way God has worked. So Eric Peterson and I have become friends as well, and God connected us in this whole journey some time back too. And so part of it was probably 8-9 years ago already. God began working in our hearts and in our family back when we were in Northwest Indiana. And then a little over 5 years ago, I took a call to Remembrance Church here in Grand Rapids. And they were thinking of planting, and he had a location in mind downtown as well. And as time went on, some things changed, as they often do, and that's okay. God keeps working in lots of different ways, often different than our plans, right? And through that, it became really clear that maybe God was calling me to just wait, to just stay where I was, and possibly be in that role at Remembrance longer term. I didn't know. And then about probably already a year and a half ago now, I started to drive down Leonard in the winter, because it was a lot better than taking 96 oftentimes. And God kind of kept working, and just as I was on that drive, just the thoughts of this church plant and all abilities, and something here in Grand Rapids. And some more time went by, and ended up one day stopping at the Family Fare grocery store on the corner of Leonard and Fuller. And I'm running real quick to grab something, back out to the car, and there's this nudging that was, well, it was more than a nudging. It was really clear, call Monroe Church. And I thought, well, that's really weird. I don't know anyone at Monroe Church, and other than I've had some history in worship arts as well, and so I knew they were looking for somebody in that role. I thought, well, I'm not really looking for that. That's weird. I'm not gonna call them. Closed the car door, and there it was again. So I thought, all right, this is pretty clear. I better listen. And so I called them and got a voicemail. I was glad I did. But it wasn't long after that they gave me a call back, probably an hour or so, and I sat down with Jim, the lead pastor there, and it was really clear, really quick, that God was doing something with a church plant for all abilities, connected through the heart, and really the work God has already been doing through Monroe as one of our ministry partners, and really they've come on as a parent church, or really like a co-parent church. They're moving into a new location at 1020 Monroe. And so that is where we will have shared space with them. And we're just excited about what God's been doing in that. So that initial conversation right away went down the road of, hey, we've got to tell you some things that have been happening here. And so it's a pretty good size location, all on one level, and it's being built out to meet universal design standards and all. It just, again, God has been just kicking doors open. So we know the need is high here in Grand Rapids, just as it is in really every location around the country. And so we're early on into this, but as of August, I began full time with City Hope GR. And if you'd like to see a little bit more too, you can go to the website is running at cityhopegr.org. There's also Facebook's ramped up and developing core team and all of that kind of thing as we prepare for a full launch. We're doing things with people now and meeting with families, so a lot of work already, but a full launch late summer.
Thanks. So both of you are unique in terms of our experience, and certainly the focus today is about worship. What does worship mean in all abilities, communities, and so you alluded to this. I'm not sure anybody touched it as directly as I'm going to push you. How many churches in our area? So our area meaning West Michigan. Let's make it pretty broad. Have focus on all abilities worship. How available is all abilities worship to most folks?
Yeah, I'll jump in there just because, when you're planting a church, you look for models often. And we looked high and low for models of all abilities church planting, even around the country, and found that we were quite unique in that call. So I would say there's one, and it's the Church of Benjamin's Hope, and possibly two with City Hope GR coming online later this summer. So there are churches that are seeking to be more aware of people affected by disability in their midst. But as far as a clear calling of all abilities worship, as far as I know, we're the only church kind of planted with that focus in our area. And some estimates say, and it's hard to nail down a number on this, but some estimates say as many as 70% of individuals that are significantly affected by disability don't have a worshiping congregation that they feel they belong in. And a lot of that, again, is because of movements and sounds and effects of disability that preclude a traditional worship experience, because it's just, it can be disruptive. And so what we've chosen to do is embrace those movements and sounds as acts of worship rather than distractions in worship, which is something, which is a very different mindset.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much, I think, answered it there, Eric, too. I searched pretty high and low through this because in the church planting process, right, you're also required, both through the RCA and other denominations to connect with people that you can learn from and kind of, again, pick their brains. And other than you, Eric Peterson, and the church at Benjamin's Hope, I had found out about a group in California that started just before COVID kind of hit, but is not. I don't know that it's as broad as, fully encompassing all abilities yet. We're going to have a conversation this week, but that is the only other one that I was able to find, and so yeah, it's pretty rare.
So I want to give each of you the opportunity to present what you've prepared before we get into my agenda. If the things that I sent you to talk about, I know Eric, you had talked about maybe sharing a thing. I want that to fall as naturally as possible in some sort of progression, but I'm going to turn it over to you just for some presentation time, knowing that you represent two different ministries before us, and just a chance to speak into our abilities team.
Yeah, you know what, Deep, we chose, just because video doesn't translate well on Zoom, it's just not as fluid as it could be. We kind of chose to, we'll put notes that link to the videos that we were kind of thinking of, and let you guys kind of watch those offline because they're just going to be better. So I think it's better because you guys are kind of going through a process of kind of trying to learn. I think it's better for us to use the time that you have to kind of jump into where you want this team to go. So yeah, we didn't have a chance to talk about that just before. So
to Eric and Dave, I want you to notice so David, would you wave your hand, Dave Graham? Okay, so you see the man who just waved his hand?
Yep.
All right, so he is presently leading our All Abilities team.
Okay. Yep.
And several of the people that are on this call or on this Zoom are on that team. And for a variety of reasons, just trying to think if there's anybody else that Mary has shared with others. So she has a grandson that she's concerned about in terms of how his life will progress, in terms of where he fits in a world that, he often feels, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mary, but he feels like the square peg trying to go into the round hole. Yeah, good. You're on.
Yeah.
Tell me about your grandson.
Caden is 12 years old. He goes to Jennison schools. He's on the autism spectrum, but they have not been able to find a church that's comfortable for him. One of the things is the loud noises. He can't handle that. Mm-hmm. And so we are concerned about it. And as grandparents, you can only say so much. So, but I think they're struggling to find a way for him too. And it's been difficult, so.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe before any kind of a presentation, on the questions I gave you, if you've got them printed out, if not, let me just read it to you. each of you have shared unique aspects of your congregations. Those characteristics have shaped decisions that you made regarding the environment, the use of other people, the level of sound that Mary just alluded to, the way that you present God's word.
Mm.
Share your stories around that. And Dave, for you as someone who's just beginning this, certainly your storybook isn't as full, but there has been motivation that has pushed you in a direction to do this. So however that fits in.
Yeah, I can kind of jump in first just because I've got more experience in that. I would say the worship environment is important and key as you're thinking about these things. I would say that a few things that I've learned, significant things that I've learned, which would I think be key pieces, is in the communication of the gospel, in the communication of God's word. We really try hard to have some real tangible handles of kind of hands-on things or different aspects of object lessons or visuals or multiple learning styles being kind of incorporated into the communication of the gospel. This is kind of just from me as the pastor and preacher in this environment. We have, it's a pretty typical length message, I would say, 25 minutes or thereabouts, not on the long end. So kind of focused and, but really trying to think about having touch points and interaction points at multiple levels. So a robust communication of the gospel and God's word with some real tangible hands-on aspects. Interactivity is a big part of the values that we have. So it's very much more of a conversation. Because there's interactivity anyway, because we've got our friends that are talking to me throughout the service or walking by or interacting with me. We've just chosen to embrace that as a value that we have. And so we just build that right into the way that we communicate. As far as kind of volume, I would say we tend to kind of bring things down a little bit, although we're very celebratory in our worship. But what we have is the ability and space for people that have sensory processing issues to be able to still be present in the worship space and have a connection with what's happening, but have a space to go to that is lower sensory. So we've got actually a sensory room that people can go to where they can still hear what's being presented and see what's being presented, but in a lower sensory environment. And I think just and we tend to do a long, pretty significant long time of singing, because the singing part of our worship is where a lot of our friends, sorry, dog. Hey, Grover, we've got the mailman is coming to the door, of course, so I'm going to just mute for a second.
Dave, climb in.
Yeah. So, and I, like I mentioned, I've been learning a lot from Eric and visiting Ben's Hope too, and then talking with people locally with varied abilities, right? So that's been really helpful. And while I wouldn't say that we've cemented anything in with what we have to have when we launch late summer here, it's starting to become clearer. And so I think in that we're talking about maybe not necessarily a lower volume than you might find in general in the main worship space, but again, that's to be determined, only because we're finding that with varied abilities, just as with anyone else, there are a range of preferences. And even when you think about like people that have lower levels of hearing and so on, and what is it like for them, as well as, you know, other people. So it's kind of right. You're thinking through a broad spectrum. And that's where I think, like Eric mentioned, the use of a sensory room is important. So if somebody wants to be in the space, whether it's using headphones, right, to help temper some of that sound, or they want to be in that sensory room, we also are going to have a nice sensory room that looks right into the main worship area, and has monitoring as well. And so, you know, as much as being a part of that as we can, the worship space itself, similar to that of Ben's Hope, and maybe Eric, you were going to mention this, but you know, is going to be very wide open with a lot of windows on the back side, so a lot of natural light, just kind of, which can be important. Um, you know, we see a lot of churches now kind of darken the room, and there's good reason for that too. But we're going to have a lot of natural light kind of behind, but then open space. So people need to wander, they need to do those kinds of things. There's freedom to do that. It's not a problem. While still having sensory, at least one, and it looks like we may even have two sensory rooms. And then, and then thinking through that too, you know, we've been talking about, similar to Benjamin's Hope, that our service will be, right now looks like on Sunday, but later in the day. We're thinking probably no earlier than 3 and no later than 4, just to give people time. Again, we know that mornings are tough. A lot of times, at least when you think about those impacted with special needs and what that looks like. So probably later afternoon, but we also want to be done in enough time that families can get home, have time to just kind of breathe, debrief, get ready for their next school day, work day, whatever else too, as well as consider having a meal together, possibly, you know, once a month or something like that after the service. So again, those are some different ideas and things going on. Just a lot that we're learning as we talk to people. And the next part about that is the dream is to create a partnership team with churches like Thornapple that understand and would want to be possibly part of that can come to a conversation and say, hey, we understand as well a bit about special needs, and here are some ideas, here are some ways that, you know, both in worship and in general in connecting with people, and that can be helpful. So yeah, I hope that hits enough of it to kind of cover what you're looking for there.
Well, so one of the things that I just want to point out as this conversation for Thornapple continues to unfold is that while we'll always maintain a relationship with Ben's Hope for obvious reasons, you know, Dave is just beginning this, and we don't always have to think about recreating the wheel. We can come alongside in partnership to be supportive in a variety of ways. You know, let's not forget that oftentimes when we're considering the population, and at least early on when we began our relationship with Whitney House, you know, there was a conversation about how, well, you know, that's not necessarily how we envision growing the church. It's not like they're going to be able to, it's not like they are going to be able to continue to support the ministry. Now, I remember that conversation well. I can remember the people that were involved and all that, and it was a learning opportunity, I think, for all of us. And so for us, I think at Thornapple, it's important to glean a couple of things. The timing of a service is important. Some of the things that show up in a worship service that may be distracting or may trigger certain things within some folks, even when, you know, beyond those that we think of in terms of other ability or disabled persons. when we think about our seniors, one of the things that probably is a more frequent conversation in the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. Kent, you can chime in if you've had this conversation with some of our members. A 9:30 service for someone that is older and mornings don't always go as easy. A 9:30 service can be a challenge. I don't think about that. In my head, there's a part of me who says, hey, let's have the service at 8:30, and that way I can get on and have the whole day. And yet for some of our members, 9:30 is a real push in terms of being able to maneuver life to get here. There are all sorts of different aspects as we consider all abilities.
Hey, Deef, one other thing that just kind of popped into my head, which I think is apropos to your team here and your conversation, is it's more difficult to transform an existing congregation that has existing mission and existing values and existing history, and kind of move that ship right toward thinking through the lens of like, hey, how are we more friendly to people of varying abilities? How are we an all abilities congregation? That's a more challenging thing than starting something new with that kind of core DNA. However, what we've found, and what Dave is kind of like journeying down as well, is a church of all abilities. We're 7 years in now. We have not been able to be self-sustaining from our internal giving. Most churches and church plants, there's this kind of 3 to 5 year on-ramp that kind of says, hey, if it's a traditional plant, if it's not kind of launched and self-sustaining in year 5 or 6, then it's probably not going to be. We have come to the conclusion and knew kind of early on that we were going to need partnering churches to be self-sustaining, be sustainable as a congregation. However, what's been so beautiful about us having partner churches as both financial and people resources for us, because we have visiting worship teams from some of our partnering congregations come and help lead our worship teams and things like that. What we found is it's not only kind of helpful for sustainability for us and kind of moves our mission and vision down the field, but it's also transformational for that partner church in their thinking about their own openness to people of varying abilities. Now, what we kind of think about is it's sort of like a spectrum, right? Like, okay, you may not be able to have an all abilities worship service on Sunday evening at your church, but we have one of those. So point your people our way. However, by doing that, they're also then thinking about, hey, what about our service? What could we do differently in our service to make our congregation more friendly? So it's sort of getting at it on both sides. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Dave, you want to say more about that and your hopes and dreams in that way?
Yeah, thanks. Wow, I love it because yeah, my heart just kind of skips a beat too, because I think like with City Hope, I shared with someone back a few months ago. I said, it's really clear God is calling this to be, and I think he has big things in store. I'm sure it's going to look very different than I imagine now, but with that, I know like the desire is not that City Hope becomes an island, is not that churches say, well, you can just go to City Hope. And while that's true, the desire, just like Eric really sharing there, is that other churches would begin to either further the steps they've taken or take some of the first steps, because there are things that everyone can do. And so I had said to this person, I said, if in 10 years City Hope is gone because everyone was sent out, and and all these churches are being equipped and helped. Not like we're the only place. That's not what I'm saying at all. But right, like if as God does that through Ben's Hope, through City Hope, through churches, Lord willing, again, the continued development, Thornapple, others. I mean, this is such a huge need and an open field that I mean that would be the dream, right? This grows exponentially outside of the walls because it's so much greater than that. So I'm totally on board. Same thought. I think that as people come, they catch a glimpse. They will. The One of the challenges that I think we're gonna face that could be a little different is that we're not housed, if you will, on location of a residential facility as well. And while Benjamin's Hope, correct me if I'm wrong again, Eric, right? There are lots of people, the vast majority, that actually now come to services that aren't residents, right? Because there's like 30 or 30 some residents, and there are way more than that that are part of Benjamin's Hope, the church at Benjamin's Hope. So we're thinking too, though, about, again, all abilities. So those with and without special needs. How does that look as the church in that worship time, in that celebrate, that's together as a full functioning church? So things for families, things for teens, things for young kids. That is like a mountain right now, but it's starting to take some shape. And so a lot there that I think then expands out into what this looks like as other churches are impacted as well.
Do either of you have something that you hoped that you could share that in the time that we've already been together you haven't? I want to make sure you get a chance to do that, and then I'm going to provide an opportunity for some question and answers.
Yeah, I think that the last thing that I would kind of share as far as kind of wisdom that we've gained in the people group that we're trying to reach is, kind of cookie cutter solutions or programs or they aren't very effective. The people that are affected by disability that we serve and their families they're all so unique, and they all have really unique needs. And so what I found is that so much of my work is I'm not only kind of pastor, teacher, shepherd, but in many ways like a social worker of sorts. So families come, they've got really unique needs. They may have housing needs. They may have mental and emotional health issues. They may not know how to get signed up for community services. And so I think just taking each family, and this is kind of for you all at Thornapple too, as you have people come into your midst, having kind of a yes in your heart to say, we want to try to make this work for you, and we're going to be the gospel for you in a really unique way. And that probably is thinking outside the box of how can you fit in our church, and more, how are we the church to you, and how are we kind of walking out what it means for you to live as full a life as you can. So I think thinking of each family through kind of we just think custom made, each family is a custom family. And I know you already think that way, the people in your midst, but with people affected by disability, and especially significant disability, just the hope that can give somebody to sit down with them and ask the right questions and say, hey, what are your needs? And just to listen. I think those that's huge learning for you as a team, as you have people come to your church, and as you kind of encounter people that you're like, man, I'm not sure that we know exactly what to do, but like having the position of help me learn what you need, and we'll do what we can to make that work. I think churches that are willing to do that and have a yes in their heart toward the difficult family or the family with the child that's like, we don't have anything here for you to think, but how could we? What could we do? Right? Those are churches that start to become transformed in the way that they think about people of varying abilities. So that's kind of what I would want to share.
Thanks, Eric.
So, boy, kind of onto that too, Eric, you're reminding me, my wife's name is Julianne. She works in special education here in Grand Rapids. And one of the things we've talked about too is, right, like a lot of students have an IEP, right, an individual education plan, particularly when you're impacted with certain special needs. And so why would that just be in education? Why wouldn't we spend time to talk about and think about the particular needs of each particular family and individual? And so maybe there's a spiritual plan, right? Like, what does that look like, and how do we help families? The worship experience, if you will, or the worship time, that corporate worship is going to be vital. Is I think, it has to be. But as we've learned in all our churches, it's also vital that it's not the only time, or the one at the top of the batting order all the time, right? There are different things that happen in our lives where we need to be living into and creating opportunities, whether through mentorship and other ways of discipling, growing, walking with at all of the stages in the journey. And I think that's how, City Hope, but really all churches, Benjamin's Hope, every church, Thorn Out, you name it, right? It becomes the church where families connect, they grow, and they recognize that, wow, this isn't a place that I just come. This isn't a place where I, have to maybe feel like I have to go to or whatever. This is a place I want to be at. This is a group of people that are an important part of my life and my journey, and God has blessed me through them, but also that He blesses us. I think I met with a young man in his late 20s. We'll just call him Mark. The other day, literally, as coffee shops opened up, and he has autism, and I said, I'd like to ask you a few things if it'd be okay. What has been your experience in the church? What is a challenge that you find, and what would you dream of, in a church? And he had all kinds of different experiences. But the one thing that really stuck with me is he said, Dave, the thing is that so many churches want to help me. They think they just need to help me. And while that's great, like, I'm still a human being who has something that I want to do. I want to be valuable. Like, I don't want to be a project. And so I think about that too, right? Like, that we are deeply missing out in the life of the church when we don't include and do whatever we have to include those impacted by special needs. We just miss out when we think about the image being made equally in the image of Christ, and the life of the church.
Anybody have a question that they'd like to ask? Either Eric or Dave or both? Go ahead, Dave. Dave Christensen.
So, Eric, I have kind of a specific question for you and Benjamin's
Yeah.
Hope, and I'll try to put some context around the question. The first part of the question is, how many people without disabilities are attending your church regularly? And then how big is the group that kind of just rotates in as far as family people, visitors, people that just want to learn more? So kind of what does those percentages look like of people that kind of come and go and who are there all the time? And then the second part of the question is, how do people without disabilities stay plugged in and feel really challenged? I mean, outside, obviously there's challenges in the relationships and getting to know people and being working together with other people. But just to kind of a little context of the question is, sometimes if we go to Ada Bible, that's a seeker church, they spend a lot of time talking at 30,000 feet. You know, if they're talking about the desert experience, I don't need to be reminded that the Israelites were taken out of Egypt. So I think in a mature church, Kent will use almost shorthand to help mature Christians kind of understand things in a quicker manner. But lots of times our Christian language can be a barrier, or it can be exclusive, or it can, you know, be non-welcoming for people to come in. So I don't know, do you think about that? Do you address that? How do the people without disabilities find challenging in their growth outside of just the ability to grow and learn with other people?
Yeah, those are great questions, Dave. So I'll take them one at a time. I would say of our 150 folks that kind of average worship attendance, it's about half and half. People visibly affected by disability and people that have no visible affective disability. So about 50-50. I'd say we have a core of about 80 to 100 that are there very kind of regularly and consistently. About 50 of which are people that live on campus, staff, and their parents that are coming pretty regularly. Another 50 that are community folks that consider this their primary church home. And then about another 50 that are there, I would say kind of what I would say rhythmically, maybe like once a month folks that say, hey, we have a primary church home, but we love what Benjamin's Hope is doing and we want to be there on a rhythmic basis. So we actually have a couple of different categories. We have members and we have church partners. And so those rhythmic folks, we actually have kind of a category for them that we kind of celebrate them as church partners. That means that we're a part of their probably financial giving, although probably to a smaller percentage than their primary church home, but they're kind of partners with us in what we're doing. So that's kind of the first part of your question. The second part of your question, I think, is what you're asking about is discipleship in some way. What does it look like to be disciple making in a all abilities context? It's tricky business. I'll be quite honest with you. We have to have discipling opportunities for people that are completely nonverbal and have some serious significant effects of disability. And so we think about scripture on tape for them or recorded scripture for them, other kind of hands-on ways to help them grow in their faith. But then we also have things like support groups and scripture studies for people that aren't affected by disability. So we try to do everything together, all abilities together. But your point is well taken that when that's your main goal, there are people that might feel like I'm not getting as much out of this church home as I desire. So we just have to know who we are and the lane that we stay in, and know that by celebrating and kind of, so what we would say is we value all abilities participation and belonging. That's a higher value for us than maybe significant depth and excellence, right? So if you've got real depth and excellence as a high value, then you're probably gonna, then belonging for people who might not feel like they can kind of get connected is going to be a lower value. So you've got to kind of pick your poison in some ways, right? So we've kind of chosen belonging and people of all abilities having a place as our higher value, meaning that some of the things that you're talking about, sometimes we can't do, which is why we've chosen very intentionally to be an evening gathering congregation, so that folks that maybe have that unmet need in our gathered community can say, I've got a primary morning church affiliation with a partnership with Ben's Hope in the evening as a second kind of expression of the gospel for our family. Does that get it for you? Okay.
Thanks, Dave. Other question? we're almost at that mark. We got started a little later this morning because we had a longer service, but closing comment, Dave, then Eric. Oh,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Dave Graham.
I just wanted to quickly chime in that it would seem to me that with our congregation at Thornapple, that the opportunity to walk alongside and to be at least some sort of a rhythmic presence at a church really focused on active outreach and inclusion of disabled people of all levels. I think that would be a valuable experience for us to enter into, and I would certainly be willing to be part of that presence. And then I think also to provide some financial support. And I think by living into this, we will learn, at least those of us who are naive and have minimal experience working in these types of settings or being part of these settings. We're not all professionals who are, have experience with ministry to disabled people. But I think that is something that we could strive to work into and live into during the next couple of years. And also want to apologize for my absence at our upcoming meeting on Thursday. Eve and I are going to be out of town this next week, and so I appreciate hearing what everybody else has to say too.
So Dave Graham, let me correct, because I might have said that. It's the children and youth long range team.
Oh, okay.
Abilities thing was what's happening after church today. And if I misspoke that, let me correct it right now. It's the children and youth ministry team of the long range planning team that meets at 8 o'clock. Not our all abilities team.
Another thing, I know that some of our all abilities team members are going to be out of town for a while, whatnot. But as I understand, they'll be back during the second half of March. And I guess that was kind of the time frame that I had in mind for our team to get together and meet again formally, whether that's in person at church or whether via Zoom. But open to other folks' thoughts on that as well. I will not be available though for this upcoming week nor next weekend.
Thanks. All right, closing comments.
You want me to start there, Tim?
Sure.
All right. So, maybe you've seen this. I think a while back, maybe sent out some information, but the numbers are pretty easy to find too, just doing some Google searches. But we know that at least within Grand Rapids, this is city limits only, that there are over 14. I'm sorry. There are just over 200,000 people that live inside city limits, and there are over 14,000 people out of those impacted by some type of moderate to more profound special needs. So that doesn't even include those that be classified as mild special needs. And then as you throw that net out even further, you go Greater Grand Rapids, the number climbs exponentially, as you could imagine. It moves up to over 40,000 people. And so we know the need is just immense. And thinking about, again, families that really can, and individuals that can come and worship in a place and with others who can love them, again, both with and without disability is just is a picture that I love, just thinking about, again, how we worship and what this looks like. And so I love dreaming about that with you, and what you've already done, and the journey that God's got you on here, and what it might look like if you feel so led, as God connects us and does some things. We definitely, like Eric mentioned, are, hopeful for churches that are ministry partners, that are willing to even be part of a brainstorming team. So it's beyond, hey, just come and see. It's beyond some financial support, but with the idea like, hey, we pray for each other, but we are part of this brainstorming opportunity too. We're hands-on, able to be involved, be blessed, and continue to learn together because we're in it then together in a different way. So that's just something that, again, I just want to share as the Lord leads. There's no pressure there, so there's nothing. I just put that out there in whatever God wants to do.
Yeah, my final word would just be one of hopeful encouragement for you all. So grateful for a church that is being intentional about thinking and praying and dreaming about how to be more inclusive, because the gospel has at its heart kind of a desire for all to come and come to Christ. So I love that you're thinking about these things. I want to encourage you. I'm so grateful for the very organic and beautiful connections between TCC and the Church of Benjamin's Hope, through the West Links, through my long, many year friendship with Tim, through just, those beautiful kind of connections that exist there, through Chris and Robin Murphy. We continue to lift up Michael. They're a beautiful partnering family with us as well. So they're close in my heart right now as well. But I think what I want to say, and I'll just be really clear, Dave, but I think you've got an amazing opportunity as a church to be a clear partner with City Hope. I think you're just knowing that we have our own local church partners in the Greater Holland area, and I think geographically that's really important that they're kind of connected with us in the surrounding community. As you think about this, if you choose to take that step, it's going to be transformational and so helpful for City Hope, but it's going to do some things in the midst of your church that I think you'll be so grateful for. So that's my hope. I hope that God is kind of knitting that partnership together. And I just want to say thank you for having us today. And I love that you've kind of thought through kind of the theology of disability and kind of some bigger ideological concepts, but you're getting on this last week, hey, what does this look like in practice? Which is, I think, a beautiful thing. So thank you for the time.
So next week, we will, Dave's going to be gone, but we're basically going to take the last 5 weeks and have a conversation. What's been stirring from what you've learned from the folks who have been part of our conversation? What ideas or thoughts or comments do you have? And we'll keep a record of those things. And then when the All Abilities team meets back again in March, it will help us probably just have some talking points to process. Dave, that sounds good to you? Yep, Dave Graham, good. See a thumbs up there. And then thanks, Eric. Thanks, Dave. I think it's been one more opportunity for us to consider All Abilities ministry through a pretty specific lens this morning. I want to remind you that we're recording starting in week. I think I posted it as week 4, but I think it was really week 3 with Ben Connor. We've been recording these sessions. Those are on our YouTube channel. So if you missed last week or you want to go back and check out something, make sure you go to the TCC YouTube channel. You'll see that Rachel taught me something this week in terms of how to load these up. So I look forward to converting this conversation and getting it up there for our records. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Take care, everybody.
Thanks all.